everyone? How are you guys doing? Good. Thanks. Dude, that's awesome. I'm so happy you're having a great day. That's totally cool. What is up? If you do not know who I am, my name is Aaron. I'm usually the person that walks up and says, hey, my name is Aaron. But today I am speaking. You guys are so lucky. If you don't know who I am, a little bit of backstory is I have the amazing pleasure to be married to my super awesome wife, Macy. We've been together for a little bit. She's cool. We don't have any kids, but we have two amazing wiener dogs, and they are the best thing in the world. One's Ozzy, one's Evie. They're so cute. And, they like to keep you up at night by licking your face to wake you up every morning. But that is a little bit about me. I'm also a PE teacher at Salem Middle School. Been there for a little bit, and then I also coach at Kellum High School. So if you go to either of those schools, feel free to say, what's up? Oh, dude, that's so cool. Wow. Dude, that's so tubular. But today we are going to get into the nitty-gritty where we are going to be starting basically a lesson going into Easter, all the good things. And of course, we are going to start with the best. So to open everything up is I have a question of, is there ever a time in your life that you have made a mistake so big that you feel like you have never or you will never have the opportunity to be forgiven? Yes. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, me too. Okay, I've also had that issue. One story from when I was a little kid, I think I was about like 7 or 8, is all the time, I don't know if you guys do this now, but all the time we would go out and we'd have it was me and my friend, his name was Malachi. We would go out and somebody would be washing the car, right? And so we, being super awesome creative kids, would go out and on the curb, as they're washing the car, basically water comes, it goes down the curb, blah, blah, blah. We were awesome. We created basically a dam to stop the water from flowing around. We stopped everything, okay? How we stopped everything is we would grab the dirt from the curb, we'd grab dirt from on someone's yard, we'd pull what we thought was weeds out of people's yards. And then there was this one time, we would literally take anything we could find. There was this one time where our neighbor, their name was Trey, we were doing it right in front of his yard, and we were like, oh, we're going to help him out. We're going to pick weeds out of their yard to help with our dam that we are creating. And it ended up turning into, we picked weeds. Their entire yard was obviously made of weeds. So we picked it was probably about that big of weeds. So their entire yard was basically just one giant dirt pile now because we had picked literally every little bit of grass out of their yard. And so basically maybe like an hour into it, the neighbor comes out and is like, yo, what are you doing? Why are you messing up my yard? Blah, blah, blah. And they were so mad at us. Like, it was ridiculous how mad they were at us. To the point where they came and got our parents, hey, you need to fix this, blah, blah, blah. That spot, I'm not even joking, was there for probably 3 to 4 years following. I felt every time I walked past their yard, I was just like, man, I did that, right? And I didn't even know I was doing something bad, but I made a huge mistake, right? And every time I saw that dirt mound, whatever, or just saw the neighbor, I just knew that person was never going to forgive me. And they probably didn't. They gave me the stink eye for a couple years following. But that leads into our Bible story. We see tons and tons and tons of times in the Bible where people make huge mistakes, but that doesn't stop them, right? So we see David with Bathsheba. We see Jonah running from God's commands. Paul's awful history being Saul of Tarsus. And then the parable of the prodigal son. We see all these different things where somebody does something super duper bad, but then we also see super awesome things that follow. So today we're basically picking up with that. We're going to be opening up to Matthew 26, 69 through 75. And what this is basically going to be doing is, this is where Peter basically denies Jesus, says, nah, I don't know the dude. He does it 3 times. right before, Jesus is crucified. So if you open up to me or with me to those verses. All right. Now Peter was sitting out in the courtyard, remember that? And a servant girl came to him. You also were with Jesus of Galilee, she said. But he denied it before them all. I don't know what you're talking about, he said. Then he went out of the gateway where another servant girl saw him and said to the people there, this fellow was with Jesus of Nazareth. He denied it again with an oath, I don't know the man. After a little while, those standing there went up to Peter and said, surely you are one of them. Your accent gives it away. Then he began to call down curses, and he swore to them, I don't know the man. Immediately a rooster crowed. Then Peter remembered the words Jesus had spoken, before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. And he went outside and wept bitterly. Okay? So, prior story, okay? Basically, they were in the Garden of Gethsemane. And they were supposed to be praying, all that stuff. Roman soldiers came up, yo, we want Jesus. / Peter cut off the ear of a soldier, right? And before that, basically Jesus had told Peter, hey, you're going to disown me 3 times. Peter was like, nah, we're fam. Like, I'm never going to disown you. But obviously, as we just read, Peter disowns him. So Peter, like many of us and many others before him, made a mistake, all right? For some, it doesn't seem like it's all that bad. But when you're literally denying Christ in front of everyone, that's a pretty big deal, right? A mistake he undoubtedly held with him forever and ever. He probably felt horrible about it and never really truly let it go. Don't you think? He even got to the point where he calls down curses on himself using God to denounce his relationship with Jesus, right? A man who is basically he has a relationship with for multiple years. My group over here, all right? Focus. Everybody look at this group over here. Say focus. All right, thank you. All right. Do you think Peter deserves a second chance? All right. Do you think my group over here deserves a second chance? Yes, they do. Okay? Yes, they do. Okay? But use that second chance wisely, right? All right. Yes, Peter deserves a second chance. This is exactly what we're going to be diving into today, that even though you have fallen, it does not make you forsaken or abandoned. Maybe you're filled with guilt, shame, fear, but this message will hopefully fix that for you, give you hope, comfort, so make sure you guys are paying close attention. So we're going to break down these verses a little bit to get to the nitty-gritty. So the first thing is verse 69. So Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard, all right? The exact moment that Jesus is basically getting taken, he's being apprehended, he's being sent off to the temple of the high priest, where later he will be crucified. Peter now basically goes to the courtyard where he is waiting for the trial to happen, whether Jesus is going to be crucified or not. If we look in the same exact scene, so not in Matthew, but written in Luke, verse 22, 54 through 55, we see that then seizing him, they led him away and took him to the house of the high priest. So talking that he took Jesus to the high priest's temple. Peter followed at a distance. Interesting. And when some there had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard and had sat down together, Peter sat down with them. So multiple things in this little verse here is, one, Peter followed at a distance, okay? Showing that when things got tough, instead of being hand in hand walking with Jesus, he put distance between them, right? And that's super interesting, at least for me, because I feel like we do the exact same thing, where we start struggling with something, and instead of running straight to the person who has all the answers, Christ, Jesus, God, all those things, right? Or same thing. We run to people, right? We run to a therapist. We run to our best friend, our parents, anything other than God, right? That's exactly who or what Peter was doing here. All right? He's putting Jesus at a distance rather than being hand in hand with him and running to the Father Instead, he goes to the courtyard and he sits in isolation and fear of what will happen, right? And then we're not going to touch on this too much, but remember that there is a fire that was kindled in the courtyard, okay? Remember that, all right? This leads to our first denial. So while in the courtyard, Peter's out there, he's cooking s'mores on the fire, right? A servant girl runs up to him, and he says, runs up to him and asks, "You also were with Jesus, the Galilean." Peter, without a second thought, instantaneously was basically like, "Nah, I don't know him. You're crazy. Like, I don't even know what you're talking about." And it was basically one of those like quick, kind of panicky answers where he was kind of freaked out. He didn't know how to answer it because he didn't want someone to think that he was with Jesus and then get him thrown in jail and then him crucified or any of that stuff. So his answer was, "No, I don't know Jesus." That was the first denial, right? Mark 14:68 tells us, "But he denied it. 'I don't know or understand what you're talking about,' he said, and went out into the entryway." All right, so basically he gets up out of the courtyard, and now he is on his way towards the entryway, the gateway. This leads to the second denial. As Peter is walking through the entryway, we see in Matthew 26:71, another servant girl saw him, and she said to the bystanders, "This man was with Jesus of Nazareth." This is a statement. She knows. She is very confident in this statement. Goes to the next verse. It says, "And again, Peter responded in a similar way, but this time he denied it with an oath. I do not know the man." He is now firm with what he said, and he now raises the bar where now he's basically swearing, using God's name, that he does not know who Jesus is at all, right? He made an oath, aka, again, swearing, saying, no, you must be mistaken. And the period of time between that first denial and the second denial is actually really quick. It's from the time he stands up out of the courtyard and then walks to the entryway. So it's not very far, right? So maybe he's still kind of in a panicky mood, didn't really get to think about, his mistakes that he just had. And so maybe it's just like I'm just going to carry on this lie because I just got caught once. It's not the end of the world, right? But about an hour later, we see the third denial. And that is, again, he is denying Jesus, okay? So Matthew 26:74 says, "Surely you are one of them." This time he responded again in the same way. He began to invoke a curse on himself and to swear, "I do not know the man." He is now using God. He says, "God, curse me if I'm lying about knowing Jesus," right? And obviously, awkward because they're like the same person. Obviously, he does know Jesus, and he's using God, who he believes in, very vividly, believes in that God is going to now curse him because he doesn't know who Jesus is. He had plenty of time between that first mistake and the second mistake to basically think about, I did something wrong. I should fix it before I do it again, right? Let's see. And again, he's terrified at this point. He does not want to get caught. He's doing anything and everything to get out of being caught knowing Jesus. And he is basically caught up in a full-blown lie. Being a middle school teacher, PE teacher, I have the opportunity to catch people in lies all the time. It's super fun. It's actually kind of a game for me at this point where, "Hey, you're chewing gum. Can you spit it out?" I'm not chewing gum. After literally they're sitting there. Like you can literally see that they're chewing gum or they're blowing bubbles, right? And I could be making eye contact with them, right? Like me and Haley right now, eye contact, right? She's eating her ramen, right? "Haley, are you eating ramen?" She says, no, I'm not eating ramen." "What do you mean you're not eating ramen? It's like right there." "No, it's not." Like that's how middle schoolers work. I don't know if you guys do that over on this side or that side. Middle schoolers do that. They are caught in a full-blown lie, and they will run with that for as long as possible until they don't get caught, right? And that's basically where Peter is right now. He is in full-blown denial. He will do anything and say everything to get away with this lie. Immediately, in Matthew 26:74, and immediately the rooster crowed, okay? Immediately. So just what Jesus has said. As soon as he denies him 3 times, the rooster will crow. And as soon as Peter heard that crow, he basically just broke down and started weeping. He is sobbing. He is crying uncontrollably. He knows that he had made that mistake. Okay? Which for some of us, we do the same thing where we fall into a sin, right? And maybe the first time we don't really make it a big deal. Second time we don't really make it a big deal. But then maybe an hour later, we're just like, oh my gosh, I just did that again, right? And again, and again, and again, and again. Until one day, you guys are just lying on the floor, face down, just weeping because you know you are so caught up in this lie and this sin that the world is telling you that you are trapped, right? It is so hard to get out of it. And that's basically where Peter is right now. So I titled this part, Oh, How the Turntables Turn. Because I thought it was funny. You guys weren't going to see that, but I just wanted to say it because it was funny. This is the account of how Peter messed up. I love that. Okay. Really, the turntables are turning over there somewhere. All right. How quickly things can turn. If you guys know what happened in the Garden of Gethsemane, all right, we talked about that a little. Hey, everybody look at this group over here. Say focus. All right. Some of you guys, I gave you a second chance. All right, let's make sure we're using it, okay? I like it. I think you guys are great. Make sure we're focused because this can impact your life if you guys are listening. All right? All right, listen. All right. So in the Garden of Gethsemane, not very long ago, a few hours prior to all these denials, Peter cut off the ear of a soldier as they were approaching trying to take away Jesus. He is literally trying to kill someone, protecting the person that he believes and loves, right? Jesus, who he literally hours after denied, right? He did that in front of 600 plus soldiers, right? That is bold. He is on something. He knows exactly what he's doing. He believes in Jesus. And so why is it in that moment, a couple hours before, he is so stern, strong in his faith, and then he's completely weak and falling, weeping, doing all these things that he knows he shouldn't be doing, right? And I think that is such a vivid depiction of how fragile our faith can be, where, again, we feel like we are so strong. We're in the right place. We're doing 5 devotions. We're in a D group. We're going to church on Sundays, Wednesdays, any other day. We talk about things with our friends, but then we get a little bit of alone time, and then we fall right into our sin, right? And that's what happens a lot of times is people are by themselves, right? No one's watching. Nobody can really stop me. No one's keeping me accountable, and that's when they fall, right? Because that's how fragile our faith is. Again, you might be asking, why was Peter in front of all these people so cowardly and weak, even after being told that Jesus, take that back. You may be asking, how could Peter, of all people, being Jesus' best friend, all that stuff, having literally just cut off the ear of some soldier dude, be so cowardly and weak even after Jesus had literally just told him, hey, you're going to deny me in like 2 or 3 hours, and there's nothing, like, you're going to do it. Like, I know you're going to fall into that sin. He didn't understand that even though your spirit may be willing, right? He's like, no, Jesus, I would never deny you. You're my Lord and Savior. You're my Christ, right? Even though your spirit may be willing, your flesh is weak, right? Peter fell into sin because he did not take the heed, right? Jesus warned him that something bad was going to happen, right? He knew he was going to deny Jesus. He did not understand that in his own flesh, he is weak and powerless. He put distance between he and Jesus, right? And as soon as he put distance, right, now he's on his own, now he's on his own flesh, and that's exactly when the devil gets you. So maybe some of you guys are like, you think you are strong enough to resist those temptations, that you think you are strong enough. You walk with the Lord, you read the Bible, you go to church, you pray at home, so you could never fall into temptation. This led you to hanging out with a girl, turning into something going a little too far. Just hanging out with friends, turning into something, you just going to a party to finding a new addiction. Just a little bit of gossip turning into someone choosing between life and death, right? But there's restoration, all right? there is light. There is a light side to all of this. Although Peter was quick to deny Jesus and commit one of the most heinous acts towards God, possibly there is always a way to come back. Okay? Once you sin, does not matter how bad the sin is, there is always a way to be forgiven. Okay? Remember that. It does not matter whether you lied about chewing your gum or if you're a serial killer. There is always a way to come back to Christ and be saved. Peter will never hear a rooster crow again without his eyes swelling up in tears. He probably felt there was no way back, that he couldn't do anything right ever again. He just let down the only person that he knows truly loved and cared for him. But what he also didn't know was prior to all of this, Jesus already has a plan. He is already working to restore and mend that relationship that Peter fell so short of. In Luke 22:31 through 32, it says, "Simon, Simon, behold, Satan demanded to have you that he might sift you like wheat. He's going to shake you up in your life, in your faith. But I have prayed for you that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned again, strengthen your brothers." Okay? He said, when he turns again. This is Jesus talking to Peter. Okay? One, Jesus just prayed for Peter that he will overcome this. Right? He is basically stating, when you turn. Okay? That is a promise that Jesus is now giving towards Peter. Right? And if we know anything about Jesus' promises, they always come true. Not if, but when. All right? So that is a promise again that Peter is receiving from Jesus. A few days following Jesus' death, so after the crucifixion, the disciples decide to go fishing. Okay? Actual fishing, not for men, but like for fish. Okay? Surely at this point, Peter was in debate of whether he should keep following what Jesus is doing or telling him to do, or if he should just go back to his old trade of just fishing. And a lot of us also do this thing where we feel like we messed up so bad, and so we run to what we're comfortable with. We run to things that make us happy, things that are of the world, who are going to take our minds off of what really the issues are, right? We run to sports. We run to school. We run to TV, video games, things like that. But we should be running to Christ, right? When the disciples had finished fishing, John 21:9 says, when they got out to on land, they saw a charcoal fire in place with fish laid out on it and bread. So quick attention to the fire, okay? When did we last hear about a fire in this lesson? In what? The courtyard, okay? Remember that, all right? So in the courtyard is where Peter denied Jesus, okay? And there was a fire kindled, right? You see, it might just be a recreation of the scene of which Peter had just denied Christ, right? And now Jesus is now with them and is basically supplying breakfast in a similar scene where now Peter is surrounded by a lot of people, all the disciples, okay? And in John 21:15 through 17, it says, when they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? He says, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Feed my lambs, Jesus said. He said to him a second time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus says, tend my sheep. He said to him a third time, Simon, which, I mean, at this point, you feel like he's getting repetitive, right? Of course he loves you, Jesus. Get the point. But he says, for a third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He says Peter was grieved because he said to him the third time, do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. And then Jesus says, feed my sheep. I don't know if you guys see what's happening. How many times did Peter deny Jesus? 3 times. How many times did Peter just say that he loved Jesus? 3 times. So what Jesus is basically doing is he is intentionally restoring the relationship between Peter and Jesus. For all the times that basically Peter had denied Jesus, he has now restored for that many times. right? Wiping that slate clean, right? That is basically what Jesus does when he dies on the cross for you, is he basically equalizes whatever sin you have committed against him, and now you are wiped clean. Now you are now at a fresh start point in your relationship, right? He is giving Peter the opportunity to profess his love and commitment to God 3 times, again, for each time that he had just denied Jesus a couple of days earlier. Now, again, Peter could have done multiple things. Peter could have just went back, became a fisherman, did away with all the whole disciple Christian things, right? Because he messed up, right? He messed up big time, right? Right in front of the Lord's face. Okay? Jesus even looked at him the second that he had committed that last denial. And it wasn't like a look of like Peter, like, why did you do that? Like, I'm so upset with you. It wasn't like out of anger, right? I think it was the look was more out of love. Like, I know you were going to do that. I knew you were going to mess up. I knew you were going to hurt me, right? But instead, I choose to forgive. I choose grace. I choose love, right? And I think that was the look that Jesus was giving him during that third denial. But what Peter does is, following that conversation, Peter lived a super courageous life, right? And that's what a lot of people don't know is, yeah, Peter did something really bad, but Peter also lived the rest of his life fully and completely dedicated to Jesus. Jesus told him, go feed, go tend, go take care of my sheep. Jesus restored him and had a plan following that restoration, right? Peter went on to share the gospel with anyone he could, just as Jesus had commanded. Luke 22:32 says, when you have turned again, strengthen your brothers. And what does he do? As soon as he has been turned again, right, after that restoration, he strengthens his brothers. He goes out and he completely just evangelizes to everyone he has the opportunity to meet, right? He is strengthening his brothers for the rest of his life. There is no stopping Peter at this point, right? Even when, he even went to the extent of sharing the gospel to where he then got thrown in jail and then crucified. And he felt so minuscule about himself, or so bad about what he had done, that when he did get crucified, he asked to be crucified upside down because he wasn't worthy of being crucified right side up, right? So he knew that Christ was above him, right? And he knew, he always remembered up until his last moments the mistake that he made, right? So to end, all right, if any of you guys are wrestling with any thoughts of, God, I don't know what I'm doing. I have fallen short so many times. I've fallen into this sin so many times. Where do I go from here? I'm going to give you guys a short answer, all right? And that's just run. And not run away from your problems. Run to Christ, right? If you guys get in the mindset of running to God with your problems rather than running to your friends or running to something that's going to distract you, you are going to fix this problem so much quicker, right? God's arms are always open, and he has been waiting a long time for you guys to make the decision to actually go towards him, right? And he's not upset that you took so long, right? He's like the prodigal son parable, where he's just happy you're home. He doesn't care that you were out wasting all your money, doing things that you shouldn't have been doing, sinning. He's just happy that you're home. And that's all he wants. He just wants you guys to believe in him and run to him with your issues. Whether you are struggling with a secret sin you are ashamed of that you've been hiding for years and years and years, or if you have finally accepted Christ into your heart, you have leaders in the back who I'm sure during this next worship song that we're about to get into, who basically think of them as doctors, right? This is your first checkup that you need to clean away all those injuries, all those mistakes, all that fear, all that shame. But in order to get all that fixed, to get cleansed of all that stuff, you have to run. You have to run to Christ. You cannot just stay in your seat. You, not your friend, you have to make the decision to seek the help. Doctors are right in the back. It's just a matter of you going to the hospital. So, I'm going to pray. if that is you who wants to take those next steps or don't know where to go next, or you have a sin that you've just been hiding and you don't know what to do, how to get away with it, or how to get out of it, again, I recommend there's tons of leaders in the back who are here to help you guys. So actually use them as the tools to fix those. So go ahead and bow your head, close your eyes. Dear Lord, thank you so much for just allowing me to come up here and be the vessel that you speak through, God. Just allow the words that I used speaking through Peter's mistakes, but also his restoration and just your forgiveness, that all the students in here just recognize that no mistake is too bad, God, that you just want to have a relationship with each and every one of us. Just allow us to focus more on you, God, and just allow us to run towards you with those mistakes that we are making, God. You know that we're going to make mistakes. We're going to do that for the rest of our lives, God, but we know that you're always going to be waiting for us. Lord, just allow us just to keep putting you first in our lives, and just allow us to go to our schools and really just try strengthening our brothers and sisters for you, God. Thank you for all you've done for us. In your name I pray. Amen.